Uh-oh. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We'll give it just another minute for a couple extra folks to jump on. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you are here today. This is the Leading Age Nebraska free webinar series for our members. And we're really excited to have one of our new business associates with us, and that's Spencer Morris. And his company is Pathway Consulting. So he works with all sorts of long term care providers in providing some education on leadership and development among your teams. So we're really excited to have him here. And Spencer has joined Leading Age in our new category, which is for small businesses. And that's really for local providers of consulting or supportive services for aging services providers. So, Spencer, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm curious if it's okay to ask, are the majority of the members their facilities, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities?
Um, Looking at our list, I'm going to say yes. But we do have a lot of home and community-based service providers too. And I know at least one or two was set up for this particular session.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, I just want to say those that are in at least an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility, I really appreciate what you do. It is a very challenging effort and feat to run those facilities. And I don't know if you hear it enough, but I really appreciate the hard work that goes into it because most people don't recognize or understand just how hard it is with all the regulations that you have to follow, as well as now the staffing challenges and things like that. So it is amazing what you do, and I really appreciate it. I was in the skilled nursing realm for about 17 years, and I love you. I'm grateful for what you're doing. I am excited to have this conversation with you today, and I do feel like it should be a discussion. It's a little bit more challenging when you're on a Zoom setting to get good discussion, but there'll be a few times where I'll ask for some feedback, and if you can either put it in the chat or unmute, they'll have that ability, Natalie. Okay. So if you
Yes,
can,
sure.
yeah, if you speak up, I'd love to learn from others as often as I can. I have a number of clients that I get the pleasure of working with, but I learn from them a ton, and I am excited to learn about what exciting things that you are currently working on. So the focus today is going to be on intentional leadership. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it's working.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. 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 Okay. So when it comes to intentional leadership, I use the term intentional very, very with a purpose, right? Because so much of what happens to us in life, and as we are trying to focus in on developing our teams and things like that, we have a lot of distractions. We have a lot of challenges that come up, and it's easy to kind of get caught up in just getting tasks done. Whereas I feel like if we are able to make a very intentional effort to develop the people that are around us, it accelerates their leadership and grows the opportunities for our teams, for the residents that we serve, for their families as well. It makes a significant impact across the board. So that's why I use that term intentional. Let's talk about how we can accelerate that growth. So, what we're going to talk about today, there's several objectives. One, we're going to talk about our self-assessments and what we are doing to be able to improve ourselves in our leadership areas, right? Self-mastery. What are those next steps that we can take that are going to help us not only on a daily, but on a weekly and a monthly basis to elevate our abilities? We're also going to get into those intentional efforts and investments that we can make on our team members. And a couple of those examples are going to be the quick connects and the one-on-ones. So these are just some of the general objectives that we have that we're going to be going over today. So I assume many of us have seen a map that are similar to this. This would be the example of a map that's at a mall. There might be maps like this at a large theme park. And the larger the area that we're going into, the easier it is to get lost, right? And the harder that it is to find the desired destination. So these maps usually will include some kind of a star or an X that indicates that you are here. And so you're able to gauge the distance from the marker where you're at and know exactly where you need to go, what turns you need to make, if you need to change to a different level. You know where you currently are, and you know the area that you need to get to. Now you know a path. Now you have a path to get there. Well, like a huge mall or a huge theme park, leadership, the scope that falls under leadership is huge. It's vast. And it's so important to identify this is where I am at currently, and I want to grow to here. So, in order to be able to grow, we need to know where we're at. Now, I'm curious, does anybody recognize this particular gentleman here?
I do not.
No, I do
Nope.
not.
No worries if you don't. This gentleman here is Ignaz Semmelweis. Now, Ignaz, he was an obstetrician in Europe during the 1800s, and he worked at Vienna General Hospital, which was a research hospital. And Ignaz, he faced a pretty significant challenge. So the physician maternity ward or wing had a horrible mortality rate for mothers that came in. Approximately 1 in 10 would pass away from what they called childbed fever. At 1 in 10, that's absolutely horrendous. And the reputation was so poor that some women, they would deliver their babies in the street and then come to the hospital because they didn't want to risk getting, whatever it was, getting this childbed fever and passing away. Now, Ignaz, he obsessed about this issue. And what was so different about this, or sorry, I got to add one other thing. There was also a midwives maternity wing. So there was a physician-run maternity wing, and there was a midwives-run maternity wing. And the midwives wing had no issues whatsoever. So Ignaz, he obsessed about this issue. What was so different about the physician-run maternity ward versus the midwives-run maternity ward? What would make that big of a difference? So he attempted to standardize what the midwives ward did. So he looked into birthing positions, he looked at ventilation, he looked at diet, he even looked at laundry. And standardizing those made no impact whatsoever. There was no difference. It so happened that Ignaz, at one point, he had a 4-month sabbatical and he went to another hospital. And upon his return, he found out that the mortality rate in the physician-run ward actually improved while he was gone. So, why was that? Why would
We
he?
do. Oh, sorry,
Sorry,
Spencer.
go
We
ahead.
we had a guess in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to see that or not.
Oh, please, do you mind
He
reading it?
had,
I don't see it.
oh yeah. Yeah, Vicky said she was guessing hand washing. So
Beautiful, Vicky. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, and Vicky, you bring up an interesting point. We got to remember this is back in the 1800s, that they did not have much understanding of germs. And so at this time, he theorized. He made a theory um, that the doctors were an issue here, that they were part of the problem. And remember, this Vienna General Hospital, it was a research hospital. And so they did work on cadavers. Now, he made a theory that particles from the cadavers were being transferred to these mothers, and it was somehow affecting them. So, what he did was he instituted a policy that all physicians were going to wash their hands in a chlorine lime-based solution prior to giving cares to these mothers. And as you could guess, what happened? Mortality rates significantly improved. So, unfortunately, it was it was the physicians that were creating a problem.
So what were
So,
the midwives doing different? Or are you going to get into that? Sorry.
so the midwives, that's a great question. The midwives didn't do any research on cadavers. So they were focused
Oh,
only on the mothers that were coming in to deliver. And so they didn't have, I'm sure they didn't have still the practices of washing hands as well and things like that. But there was definitely infection and a significantly higher level of germs that were on the cadavers, of course. And you can imagine, I mean, it's horrible to even think about, right? But the idea of someone working on a cadaver and not washing their hands prior to going and working with someone that's alive, or even doing anything else before washing their hands. But this was their lack of understanding at this time. And so those extra, the germs and the grossness that was on those cadavers, they were inadvertently transferring over to those women, and that was what was causing such an increase in that, or causing that poor mortality rate. So I ask, who was the problem in this situation? Ignas and the physicians. But did they know that they were contributing to the problem? Now, I know I know we all know the answer is that they were not. They did not know. And so I would ask this question of us, and I'm asking for some vulnerability here, but can we at times contribute to the problems of our teams without even knowing? Could we be part of the problem? Now, I want us just to think about that for a second. We don't need to answer that question right now, but think about that from a vulnerable perspective. Are there situations that I am unknowingly contributing to issues that are going on with my team? Now, I would propose that we all are in some way, shape, or form, but it's usually not intentional, but it does happen. And unfortunately, sometimes when problems happen, um, we can naturally get defensive, right? And we can look to blame others. We can also look to blame external situations. Uh, and I think we need to fight against that and look to what do I have as far as my ownership in this particular issue, and how can I turn that around? How can I make an impact for the positive? So let's talk about this intentional um, let's talk about this intentional investment in you, in ourselves. So the first thing that I would like to propose is that we need to do an evaluation and assessment on ourselves. Um, and so before I get into the next spot, we're going to talk about some potential tools that we can use that help us invest and assess ourselves. What are those kind of tools that help us really evaluate objectively where we're at. What are we doing well? What are we struggling in? So I mentioned earlier that I have a number of different clients that I get to work with, many of which are in healthcare and many of which are not. But I feel like there are many of us that can get to what I call the leadership plateau. So I don't know if you've all seen plateaus, but they're a beautiful land formation. Much like in this image right here, a plateau is what looks like a mountainous range that has completely just leveled off, and it's due to erosion and weathering. But that's what they look like. And I compare this to leadership because many times many of us can be working towards our growth in leadership. And then, for whatever reason, whether it's distractions, whether it's problems or challenges that we're faced with, we kind of level off in that growth, and we reach what I would call that leadership plateau, where we kind of stop improving and we stop growing. And whatever the reason, it can happen. And I've met a number of leaders that feel the same. And so it is important for us. We have the responsibility, since we're in leadership positions, we oversee and we support and we serve many people. It is our responsibility to make sure that we continue our growth so that we can best serve our teams, our residents, or the customer, and their family members. This is something really, really important that we figure out how to continue that drive upward. So I mentioned that we were going to talk about some of the self-assessments that are available. These are a few that I know of that I've either had experience with or someone close to me has had experience using. The Emotional Intelligence 2.0, the Strength Finders 2.0, Clifton Strengths, Maxwell Leadership Self-Assessment, and the Predictive Index. So I want to open this up just for a minute to see if anybody has had experience utilizing any one of these tools, or if you've used a tool that's not listed here that you felt like this was a wonderful tool and I'd love to share that with others. So let's open that up just for a minute. Anybody used any one of these tools here?
I have.
Kirsten, you have?
Anyone else?
I have two.
I'm
I bet
curious,
others have.
what tool have you used before?
Strengths Finder.
Nice.
And then is the Maxwell Leadership Self-Assessment, is that the 4 different areas one that has like country club, team, um,
Good question. The Maxwell Leadership one that I used, it was a free online. I was just curious, and it was a free online, and it was based upon the 5 levels of leadership. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but it kind of categorized you. There's 5 different levels of leadership, and it ranked you in each of those levels.
okay, I'm not familiar with that one. The one I was thinking about was the one, Paul Rican has done some leadership training for us at Leading Age, and he used one where there was 4 different areas, and I'm trying to think of what that one was called. One was country club
Can't remember
leader,
either.
one was um team leader, and then there were like 2 others. I don't remember what they were.
Interesting.
find
I
it,
also have done, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Natalie.
I've also done strengths finders, but isn't Clifton like Gallup's like updated version of strengths finder, or is it
Yeah.
related? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a Strength Finder book, and it does a series of assessments within it. But the Clifton Strengths, I think, is, from what I understand, I haven't done it myself, but it's a very detailed, really digs into where you fall.
It's like the full 36 different areas, and then they give you a top 5. And yeah, I've done that one too.
Yeah,
Strengths finders did that too. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And there's also another one that I didn't write down, the DISC assessment. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's like a 4 category area, and it breaks down the personality, so to speak, and where you fall within those. Has anybody else used any of these? Stacy, Erica, Vicky,
Stacy
anybody
said
else?
none in the chat.
Are any of those free, Spencer?
The Maxwell Leadership Self-Assessment I know is free. That one
Okay.
you can do online. Um,
Okay, Stacy said that she might have done disc, but yeah, there's just so many out there that you've probably, I mean, I would think over time everyone would have done something, but
You would think
Right.
so. And we've all been in different situations, right? Whether it was maybe a work situation where our leader wanted us to do it, or you just got
mhm.
curious and so you kind of dug into it on your own. Um, and the several that I've done the predictive index, I've done the DISC assessment, I've done the Maxwell Leadership Assessment, all of which gave me wonderful insights. So there's not necessarily one that I would recommend over another, but I would recommend that we are utilizing one at least, right? That we're trying one. Let's see. So Vicky says, I've done one in the past, but so long ago, haven't done any of them. Okay. So it looks like
They
we
can
have,
change over time too, so it's always good to kind of go back.
they
Oh yeah,
do.
and Kim has done a couple of them, she says, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Kim, did you say which ones you've done?
She said Strengths Finder and Clifton. Yeah, people can unmute, by the way, if they want to. That's fine. Not have to just do chat, but
Yeah. The
I love it. And
emotional intelligence one sounds cool.
the emotional intelligence one is very cool. And I invite anybody to unmute, speak up. Anybody speaking other than me, it's going to be a great thing. Okay, I shouldn't speak the entire time. But any of these are great assessments to kind of help us figure out. When it comes to weaknesses, some things are obvious to us, but other things aren't. And so when we do an assessment like this, it really helps open it up objectively, and it helps us self-assess, right? And look at, okay, maybe I am struggling in this area. And just by having that knowledge, we're able to make a plan to let's work on this, let's focus on this. And now I can improve myself in an area that maybe it was hindering certain growth or progress. Maybe it was hindering my team in some way. So a free one for sure, I know, is Maxwell Leadership. I know that one is free. And if you buy the book Strengths Finders 2.0, that's in there as well. So I don't know of others that are free, but there are many that are great tools to use. So thank you for that feedback there. I am curious. I'm constantly wanting to learn if certain self-assessments individuals feel like are better than another. All right, so I bring up that we need to look internally for improvement first in order to serve those around us to the level that they deserve. And I came across this wonderful quote by Stephen R. Covey, and he's the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The 8th Habit, many other books, and very insightful individual. But he said, you can't be successful with other people if you haven't paid the price of success yourself. We want to serve and help uplift other people, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're paying the price first, right? I think initially to if you've flown on a plane and they go through that whole demonstration at the beginning before you can even take off, that if pressure in the cabin changes and oxygen masks come down, you have to first put the mask on yourself before you put the mask on the person next to you. And that feels very, very backwards for many, because if they're traveling with a child, a loved one, they're thinking, my first impulse is going to be, I need to take care of them. I need to make sure they're okay first. But they stress, make sure you put your mask on first, because if you pass out, you're not helping anybody. So make sure you get that on yourself, and then you can help other people. And I would say that this is important to be able to help, to be able to truly serve and best serve other people. We need to make sure that we're constantly working on ourselves. So, and I would add to that component too, we don't need to be perfect. I'm not suggesting at all that we need to be at a level that is just stellar. We're at the top level of leadership in order to be able to serve other people. Not the case at all. But we should be actively making improvements. We need to be actively working on that. Okay. So now that we've kind of talked about how we're going to intentionally invest in us to improve our leadership, let's talk about how we can intentionally invest in our team. How can we intentionally invest in others? So one concept that I absolutely love is called the Quick Connect. And this concept comes from the book It's the Manager, which is by Gallup. Has anybody read this book before? Are you familiar with this by chance? The It's the Manager is of course, Gallup is a research organization, so they have a ton of data that they utilize. And this book was written with a lot of that data and research. And so much of it was stressing as they looked at organizations that the reason why issues with productivity, the reasons why team members would leave, retention percentages and things like that, really came down to their supervisor or their manager and the kind of environment that they were creating for them. So the manager, or in the case that we're talking today, I prefer to use the term leader. If you are operating the way you should be, you can be a manager and a leader at the same time. And so in this situation, they brought up that a powerful tool to use on a day in and day out basis. This is why I love it. You can use it every single day, is use the Quick Connect. Now, this is where you would need to first round consistently. So if you're at a facility or if you're in a different type of environment, that rounding where you're taking the time to go out and touch base with each individual that's out there. Now, I'm going to pause here just for a quick second and share some wisdom from a DON that I worked with years and years ago. I was the marketing director in a facility in Southern California, and I became interested to become a licensed nursing home administrator, and I interviewed and was getting into the AIT program. Well, this DON at the facility where I was at, she wanted to give me some advice, impart some of her wisdom, and she was by far one of the best DONs that I've ever had the opportunity to interact with. Just a phenomenal DON. Her name is Cheryl. And Cheryl told me, she said, I know you're getting into the AIT program, and I want to share one nugget. If I can give you one nugget that you live by in your administrator career moving forward, it's this. When you start your day, come in, just set your computer down, set your notebook and your bag down, and go out onto the floor. Instantly round before you do anything else. Don't open up your email. Don't do any of that. Go get on the floor and engage with the team. Find out how they're doing, and find out what's going on. And that was such a wonderful bit of advice, because I do feel like it's easy for individuals, especially when facilities might be running pretty smooth, to miss out on the importance of rounding. Do it first thing. And I would recommend doing it at least twice a day to make sure that you're engaging with as many team members as you possibly can and residents. So back to the Quick Connect. The first key component is that we're rounding consistently. The second is that you're stopping to greet each team member. So I know one of my tendencies is that I like to move. I'm trudging down the hall. Sometimes I'm on a mission, and I want to greet people, but it's hey Jim, how you doing? And I continue on. Whereas the Quick Connect, it's necessary to stop and chat with that individual. Stop to greet them, look them in the eye, smile at them, and have what I would call just a quick conversation to check to see how they're doing. Now, not just how things are going on the floor, but check to see how they are doing. As you engage with them, you start learning more about team members. You start learning about their family. How many kids do they have? You start learning, and it goes in a little bit deeper. You start learning that they have their son is currently in basketball, or they have a daughter in track, or a daughter in dance. And you learn that they have, that child has a game in 2 nights, or they have a recital that they've got coming up. And it allows for you to be able to be aware of and interested in those things, so that when you follow up on an ongoing basis, you're able to say, hey, Jim, how does your son's baseball game go? Oh, it was great. He went 3 for 4 at bat. He did a phenomenal job. His team won. And you're like, oh, that's amazing. Tell him congrats from me. And now you connected on a different level. It's not just how are you feeling today? It's how are things going, right? You're connecting more on a deeper level, and it's not taking a ton of time. You want to follow up with meaningful things in their life. And in doing this, as you show genuine interest, you're also communicating that they matter to you. That is so important. Now, I know that in general, everybody in a leadership or manager role feels like these individuals matter. But sometimes we unfortunately will look at them as they matter from the standpoint of having a good facility. We kind of see them as a cog in the operation, and we need them in that cog, but we need to look at them past that. We need to look at them as people with dreams, hopes, fears, challenges. Oh, I'm sorry, Carla, were you going to say something? I think Carla unmuted for a quick second. Maybe not. Okay. So, but as we look at those individuals, as people, we're able to show them how they matter, not just as a cog in our operation, but they matter as an individual. And I'll tell you right now, if we think back to leaders that we've had the opportunity of interacting with, those leaders that really make us feel like we matter, that makes a huge difference. We want to work and be part of the mission in creating something truly special. So that's one of those are the key elements of the Quick Connect. Any questions or comments when it comes to the Quick Connect? I haven't been watching the chat as closely as I should have. Doing a quick glance. Okay. All right. So next, another tool that I want to talk about that's incredibly effective and incredibly helpful is the one-on-one. And really quick, of all the people that are participating today, how many do consistent one-on-ones with your team? Either with a supervisor or with team members that you are responsible for?
You said
Okay, so it looks like
occasionally, but not often.
got it. Thank you so much. So occasionally, but
Yeah.
not often. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
this was a huge area when I was in like direct service for social work,
Mm.
kind of a
Why is that,
mandated thing.
Kristen?
Why is that?
Yeah, why was it such a huge thing?
It's pretty much it was mandated so that you were doing rounds with a supervisor on a regular basis. It usually was about once a week. And it was really to make sure that everyone was doing okay, but you would also kind of go through your caseload and talk about any specific issues, ethical types of things, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like the one-on-one, I want to talk about before we get to the content of the one-on-one, I want to talk about what the benefits are if we are to do consistent and effective one-on-ones. So first off, you got the time spent with each department head, which shows investment in them. That's first and foremost, and I love that. I have to share, and I hope you don't judge me too harshly, but there was a time when I was running a facility and I was not good at one-on-ones. I was very inconsistent, and I spent most of my time with the nursing department, with my DON, and just because that was where most of what was going on happened. You know, our challenges when it came to clinical issues and things like that, and so that's where I was spending the majority of my time. Well, I had an activities director who was phenomenal. She always made sure that we had such good activities going on. And unfortunately, in because there were such good activities going on and she had such a good grasp on the department, I failed to really spend much time with her. And in my negligence to a degree of not spending time with her, at one point she came to me and she said, "Spencer, do you not care about the activities?" And I said, Of course I do. Why would you say that?" And she said, "Well, you don't take the time to come and check on me and see how those activities are going. You pop in once in a while to the activities, but I just don't know that you really feel like they're that important." And in that moment, she taught me what I was doing wrong by not investing time in her. I was communicating that those activities just simply weren't important. So right then and there, I committed to make a change. And I was so grateful that she said something because that was not what I wanted to communicate, but that was absolutely what I was communicating. So we started doing our one-on-ones, and it made a huge difference because then I got more involved and she was able to share more of what was going on and how we could get other department heads involved. And it really improved the feel of the activities and the engagement of department heads with residents, and it was a beautiful thing. So one of those benefits with the one-on-ones is that time that you invest with that department head and what it communicates. You're showing the interest in them and their department, why it's so important to the operation as a whole. It opens the door for more communication because the more you're engaging in those one-on-ones, the more it creates an environment that can feel safe, and it can allow them to feel more comfortable to say to ask questions or to challenge if something doesn't feel quite right. It just opens that door for more transparency and communication. It also opens the door for a higher level of accountability. If you think about it, as you're engaging on a regular basis, it makes it a little bit easier for you to hold someone accountable and for them to accept it without it being overly hard, a hard pill to swallow. It also opens the door for you to be able to be held accountable. So it goes both ways. So these are the benefits, and this is why I wanted to share this first, because I really want to stress that one-on-ones can be a huge game changer for any leader and any operation. So now let's talk about what are those components of a strong one-on-one. So these are the five things that I have that are kind of the non-negotiables to make part of a regular one-on-one. First is the check-in. Checking in to see, again, just like that quick connect, how are you doing? How are things going? And it's not just from a department standpoint, how are things going at work, but rather how are you feeling overall? You want to again know what's going on in their life. Now I say that without getting overly personal, because there is a boundary there, right? But you do want to know what's going on with them. What are they passionate about, and how, you know, maybe they've got a hobby that's just incredible and you want to show some interest in that hobby. That goes a long way in just building that relationship that's necessary when it comes to that leadership role, that leadership relationship. Now, it's also a key time to be going over measurables. What are those particular things that they're responsible for as part of the option or part of the operation, and are they hitting those targets? So, for example, when in a facility, the three things that I would make sure were all part of every single one of my one-on-ones with department heads were first PPDs. We were going over to make sure that we were in line with our PPDs. And if we weren't in line, we knew exactly why. It was planned, it was anticipated, we had a new hire or something like that. So we knew that the PPD was going to go up a little bit. And when I say PPD, per patient day, that's how we were, gauging what we were spending from a labor standpoint on an ongoing basis. The other measurable that we would go over would be spend downs. If that particular department head had a budget that they were spending on a monthly basis, we had a spreadsheet that was our spend down that we would be keeping track. This is what I've spent so far for the month. I still have this much remaining. And that way we knew that we were staying within budget for that particular month. And we were able to make a plan if we had an additional expense that we knew was going to put us outside of our goal spend for that month. Then we could be able to include some other departments and say, if another department wasn't going to need to spend as much, we were going to borrow from that budget. It just increased that level of accountability when it came to what they could spend or what they should be spending on a month in, month out basis. So PPD, spend down, and the third thing was overtime. We just wanted to make sure that we had our fingers on the pulse of any overtime that was going on. Now, overtime could have been planned, it could have been anticipated, but we wanted to make sure that we knew when it was happening that we anticipated it. Because you want to, one, control the expense of the overtime, but two, you also want to make sure that you're not burning people out. If they're working too much, unfortunately, that can burn them out, and then they, before you know it, they're looking for another job. So those were the three measurables that I wanted to make sure were in most of my one-on-ones. If it was a different department, let's say it was our business office and we needed to go over accounts receivable, we had different measurables in that realm. So just make sure that there's measurable tracking things that you're going over so that you can show when your department head is doing an amazing job, or if there's areas for improvement that you're able to help that person in that process of improving. So the next thing that I would make sure to go over in the one-on-ones was, let's review team members' needs. Individual team members in their department, and how are they doing? If you had a new hire and you wanted to make sure that they're having a great experience and that they're feeling like they've been fully trained and that they're confident in what they're doing, you want to just get a feel for how are each of the individuals doing in your department. Now, if it's a large department, you can't go through everybody one-on-one, that's fine. Just ask for who are those individuals that are needing help and what's the plan to be able to provide them some additional assistance. Maybe they need a little bit more training. Great. Let's make a plan for having them have one of our stronger team members give them another day's worth of training. So you're just able to really dive into who are those individuals that need more assistance and how do we help them? Let's make that plan. So the fourth thing is to make sure that we have goals specifically for that department head or for that team member. What are the goals that you are working on? And they could be, and they probably should be, outside of the measurables that you're already working on. Maybe you have a team member that struggles to speak up in meetings and they want to be better at that. So that person has set a goal to make more of that conscious effort to speak up. Maybe they have a hard time with hard conversations, holding others accountable, and they need a little help in knowing how to do that. Now you know what they specifically want to work on, and you can be that accountability partner that helps them in that process. So let's say they struggle to speak up in meetings. You're able to tell them, next meeting, I'm going to give you that look that I'm encouraging you. I can tell you got something to say. I want you to say it. right? Or when you have a hard conversation, when you have planned a hard conversation with someone, let me know when you're planning on having that hard conversation, and we can follow up, 10 minutes after to evaluate what you felt like went well, what you feel like you want to do a little bit differently next time. Now you're taking an active role in helping that individual to improve in those areas that they have goals. They want to get better at something, and now you've just helped them. Now you're taking that active role and you're going to accelerate their improvement. That's the kind of leader that people want to be around all the time. And finally, the final component of a strong one-on-one is the feedback sesh. Make sure that there is some time where you are not only providing some feedback to that individual based upon things that you observed during the week, and you want to help them to be able to improve upon that. So you're giving them that feedback on an ongoing basis. A key component of this, though, is that you are asking for feedback. You want to know what their perspective is. If they felt like maybe you missed on something, maybe you didn't handle a situation right, asking for that feedback opens the door and creates more of a culture of open communication and open feedback, so that people aren't scared of it, so that they're looking for it. They know that it's intended to improve individuals. So that feedback session, even just taking a few minutes for that, makes feedback feel more normal. And in fact, maybe they even seek for it. And that allows them to accelerate. Again, they can accelerate their progress. So I love that component of a good one-to-one. Now, one-on-ones can vary as far as how much time that they take. I would recommend it can also vary as far as the frequency. I definitely recommend that it doesn't go that you don't do one-on-ones any less than once a month. I recommend, especially if a team leader is struggling, that it be a once a week kind of a thing. If they're a little bit stronger and they're doing pretty well, maybe it could be once every other week. But don't let it go too much time to where you're not doing these one-on-ones, because I promise they done effectively, they will help that department head to accelerate their progress. They're going to better serve their teams and the residents in their area. It just really makes them feel like they have been invested in, and they're more motivated and determined to do the best job they can possibly do. So now I've gone through a couple of different things. I know in certain elements I ramble to a degree, but I get really excited about this, and I love talking about these things, because if we can improve our level of leadership, we are able to better serve those people that we are responsible for, those people that are in our charge. And they are able to grow and develop as individuals, and not just at work. They're able to grow and develop as people, and maybe as in their families, in their communities. They're able to contribute more. They're able to feel more fulfilled. And this is what we want more of, right? We want that to expand outside of just the work environment. So I want to take just a couple of minutes as we're wrapping up to see if there's anybody that they feel like, hey, there's this one thing that we do, this tool that really helps us to invest from a leadership standpoint, that I'd love to share with the group. Does anybody have anything that they would love to share?
We did have somebody mention earlier when you were talking about how many times they touch base. It said she talks with her team, but just not much one-on-one. So
Gotcha.
I'd see how that would be easy to do.
It is. And so I love the one-on-ones for all those reasons that we talked about. And I've in my opportunity to serve in this consulting role, I've had the opportunity to engage with some administrators and leaders that they talked a lot about having that open door policy. I want people to come in and talk to me. Unfortunately, they kind of just hung out in the office a lot, and they weren't getting out. They weren't going out and seeking, what's going on the floor? How are people doing? And I'm going to go show them that I'm interested in them. And so that's the reason why I'm pushing and I promote the Quick Connect as well as the one-on-one, because you're going to them, you're engaging with them, and then that will reciprocate the engagement from them as well. So as much as we can get out of the office to a degree. I know we have meetings too, but to get out of the office and make that intentional effort to engage, the engagement will be reciprocal. Any other final comments, questions?
Yeah, this is Vicky. I don't
Vicky?
have a tool that I used, but I will say when I started out supervising, I was pretty young, and I started out especially like working on the scheduling and stuff, and I had very, very high expectations of my staff. And I did not use one of these self-assessment tools, but I do stress how important it is to use a tool maybe on yourself, because what I seen later in myself is I was so, like I said, had high expectations. I expected everybody to be at work, never call in. If you have sick children, well, by George, you have a husband, you should have backup babysitters, blah, 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 blah. And then after I'd been married about 7 years, I started having children, and I realized, wow, you do, there are times when your backup babysitter also is not able to take your children. And you do have times when you literally do have to call in because of your sick children. And so I became very much more of an understanding boss working with a schedule, because I was actually going through the same thing that my employees were going through. And so I became a more understanding employee and became more, hey, listen, I understand. Hey, I can work on the floor that day for you, because they didn't have daycare or whatever. And so I started looking at myself and realizing, I need to learn how to walk in their shoes. And I became a lot better supervisor for the rest of my career, just because I started learning how to, I've got to start listening to them and what they're actually going through. And I did a lot of what you say. First thing I did every day was go out and talk to them, exactly what you said. Before I started meetings, before I did anything, I just came in and went right out to the floor, because you don't have time later in the day. You think you will, you think you might do it right after lunch. No, you get involved in meetings, things come up. So I did it first thing in the morning. And then that way, what they said, if there was anything I knew I needed to do based off of what they said, I could throw it into my day. But yeah, that your employees are what's so important. And I always used to tell them, I have to train you how to do this work, because they come to me for guidance, but I'm not the one that's going to be here every day. I'm not here 7 days a week. So I've got to train you how to do and provide my knowledge to you. So yeah, it's very important to listen to them.
I love it. Vicky, you brought up a number of different great things. Thank you so much for sharing, because the recognition that sometimes our thought process and things like that evolves, right? We gain additional insights and we're able to better understand our team members, and that helps in the interaction. That's why it's so important that we're constantly looking at, what can I do better? Or what do I need to be working on? What do I need to be focusing on? And I love that. And your engagement with your team members and empowering them. You give them the skills, you train them, but then you're also giving them that freedom to a degree of you show the best way to handle certain situations. I will support you, and you will be that person that shows that level of leadership even when I'm not around. So I love that. That was great comment. Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to share?
Just share that my crossroads with that needing to do one-on-ones and touch bases was when I had a larger office, and I would end up with a line outside my door in my office. And so I knew that I had to change my habits. And so I ended up changing to, which my staff then would joke with me, she's in the building, but she's not at her desk, because I wouldn't end up at my desk until about 10 in the morning, because my management style was managing by walking around.
Mm.
And I would go stop by everybody and check in with them. But then I had regular one-on-ones that I did, when I had a larger team. And it was really that moment of, why is there always a line outside my door, that made me change my ways.
I love that. That is so cool, Kirsten, because you did recognize there is something that maybe needs to change, and I'm going to make that change. It's so easy for us to look outward when it comes to, issues or challenges or whatever, but you are looking at, okay, there's something that I need to do different that's
Well,
going
and
to
they would
better
come to
serve
me
this
with
team.
things big and things small. And so no one could really prioritize when they needed to come to me, but it shut down dramatically when I started being proactive and going to them.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this time. I appreciate the engagement. I wish I had more time, just because there's so many
And
insights that I know many of you
if
have.
you
But thank you.
if you're
Thank you.
coming
I
to the
really appreciate it.
conference, you can meet Spencer in person. He will be there with us. He's not presenting, but he will be there at the, are you there both days, Spencer?
I'll just be there for the expo.
Just for
Unfortunately,
the
I got something
expo.
else the next day
Okay.
or the previous day.
So yeah, stop by and talk to him there. Give him a call if there are things that you are trying to work through with your organization. Spencer would love to help. Thanks so much for
Also, by the
sharing
way,
with us
guys.
today.
Oh, sorry, Kirsten. I'm so good at interrupting on Zoom meetings. I don't know why that is. Spencer is going to be at booth 27, which is going to be great location. There's going to be lines for the ice cream machine at the next booth. So he's going to be in a great spot. So find the ice cream and you will find Spencer probably, or right next to it.
I'll be first in line for the ice cream.
Awesome.
I know you're going to be in a great spot.
I had several requests to send the recording out, even to those that were on today. So Spencer, if that's okay with you, we'll get it in everybody's hands. And
Great. Thank you.
yeah, we look forward to seeing all of you in Kearney.
Thank you. It was very good.
Great. See you soon. Bye.